All right, welcome to Duckman TV and Weekend Warriors today. Got a special guest on tonight. It's the first sports edition for the year. We've got Marc de Paoli. So he is the league commentator in Blacktown District Soccer Football Association. He's a media services officer and digital journalist. And he's doing a pretty good job. Took over as league commentator, I believe, last year in the Blacktown Premier League. So he's a young guy. He's on his way up. And he's been doing stuff with the Wire as well to SER on 107.3. Marc, welcome to the show. Welcome to
Thank you.
Duckman TV.
Thank you very much for having me. Heard good things about this show and had a brief look at some of the stuff on there, and I'll be watching along a whole lot more now. We've been chatting, you and I, about sports and commentating and the like for many moons now, so it's good to finally put this to a face-to-face conversation.
Absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to it. So you're only a very young guy. How old are you at the moment?
I turned 21 this year in June, but so 20 at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge thing, getting into the commentary game so young. There's not many people that do it. So even pundits and that stuff, guys will get into punditry normally at the end of their career for injury and stuff like that. So how did the path come about that you got into doing this?
So when you say doing this, do you mean like in my position now? Like how did I get here?
Yeah. How did that come about?
So I was somebody who I just didn't necessarily grow up watching football. What I did was instead I had an interest one day in what I used to call soccer back then, and I looked up world's best football player or soccer player, and I came across a couple of compilation videos. And as years went on, and I would watch more content, and I've consumed thousands of hours of content. I don't listen to Spotify on the way to work. I listen to rap recounts of games and things like that. And so that's where a lot of my time has gone. And what I found myself doing was that commentary analysis aspect of football was just as important to me as actually watching football. And what I could learn from that helped me to then learn about the game itself. And it was about learning how legends talk about the game. And then I would find myself looking at goals and being able to, and this is something a lot of people do, but me in particular, I love being able to associate great footballing moments with great bits of commentary. And that inspired me. And when I would put two and two together, I'd be watching games with my family, and they'd have to tell me to shut up because I'd be saying things based upon my research or what I'd be watching. And, I'd be sitting through holding a thesaurus and trying to figure out what new words I could do to describe a pass or a certain type of shot. And I was like, okay, why don't you do something with this? So I bought this microphone, which is sitting here. I'll try not to put any feedback as I put it down. And I started a YouTube channel, and I would put myself on a live stream and talk over A League games, EPL games, La Liga, Serie A, French League, UCL, UEL. And I built a portfolio. And then when I came to here, the BDSFA competition, it was originally a Facebook advertisement for the ground announcer job, which involves playing music and pronouncing names and the numbers of the player who scores. And to show that I could use my voice in an elaborate way, in a confident way, I plugged in my YouTube channel. And they said, hey, we have a position available. We think you could be really good for it. And here we are still.
That's a good story, how that come about. So I saw that there are a couple of people in the association that knew I was doing commentary. I commentate rugby games and stuff like that. So you take the opportunities to get presented before you, and they told me about that. And I thought, oh, that's a good gig. I've already got stuff on. So I'm excited that someone young and vibrant and that loves the game has got the opportunity, and it's a great opportunity. It's a stepping stone now to do bigger and better things. So when did you first get involved with football from playing point of view or anything like that?
Sure. Just before I answer that, I will say, and nothing against the question at all, but I'm just trying to say BDSFA and Spartans here in terms of this commentary position, you could describe it as a stepping stone, but for me, I just want to be really clear that for this place has been such a like everybody here is a friend of mine, and I trust the people I work with, and I love the people who I work with and who I've met through it. And I don't see it as much of a stepping stone because I do feel like what I'm learning here is just as applicable in an A League setting or an English league setting, but it's just at a different level with different people, with different amounts of people doing the same job. So what I think this is learning as football in Australia develops, and I develop along with it. Back to the question that you asked, and it might have slipped my mind for a second, but I grew up with football. I played it very young out in the Kenthurst area. That's where I was living at the time when I was before 10. I gave it up, chased around a couple of other sports for a little bit, was terrible at cricket, didn't make a single run. And the very first over I ever bowled, the very last ball went through the wicket between the second and third wicket and like the actual stumps. And I decided from there with the rest of the season still to play. I never wanted to play ever again, ever. And I found my way back into football through a bunch of friends who had kept playing their team. And I was like, I miss this. And then I sort of gave it up when I became a goalkeeper, and then forgot that I had Maltese genes and didn't go past 5'9". And then the position I'd trained myself in for the last 10 years was not one that I was really sort of built for. And that's when I really sort of moved into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So how did you get into commentary and digital media services, multimedia stuff to start off with? Did you? Obviously, that's a decision you need to make before you get to the end of year 12. So you've completely fallen in love with the sport, and obviously decided something you wanted to do. I knew, like, I only do this as a part-time. It's a hobby for me. I'd love to do it full-time, but it's not an opportunity at me for the moment to be doing it full-time. I'm 44, and I fell in love, I reckon, with commentary and all the analytics of the game when I was about 12 or 13. So that'd be a similar reflection for you, how you...
Yeah. Well, I study, I do a journalism degree. I'm in the third year of it at UTS. Absolutely recommend the course to anybody. It's part of the communications degree there. Journalism is a major. And I knew my English results coming through school were good, and I was always a confident speaker. And I feel there has to be a sort of social aspect to commentary, in that you can say things that is able to get something out of the people who are listening to you. So that's something that sort of resonated with me. And I went from there. And it wasn't until, though, my second year. So I'm in third year now, like I just said, but it wasn't until my second year of uni when this opportunity originally arose. And when you mention multimedia and stuff like that, that was things like producing written work, and that was producing audible work and visual work. So I was doing a mix of that. I write as part of my journalism degree. Excuse me. I produce a lot of social media related posts, interview related stuff. Here at BDSFA, now that I've got the role and I've now moved into a full-time position here, I now manage websites and our social media pages. I run a podcast here as well. So minimum 3 sets of interviewees per week. And that involves me planning who comes in and asking questions, and then editing all that together, using things like non-copyrighted music. That's sort of where that multimedia sense comes in. So we're doing a visual / audio podcast. I'm writing here, so that's where that sort of multimedia terminology can be applied.
Yep. So you've come from the Hills district to the Blacktown district, as I came from the Nepean to Blacktown, and the district that I came from in Nepean was a very British European style of football, come to a very much more multicultural mixed style. They play a mixture, and that would have a lot to do with the mix of players as well, the race backgrounds and just the different philosophies they've got in the different countries they come from. And that was interesting for me, because it was a whole different, gave me a different perspective on coaching and everything I'd been taught and played with and that over the years. So have you found that an interesting challenge and different in your preparation to set up for match commentary and stuff, looking at...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that we've both found that maybe not difficulty, but a challenge, I guess. And that's a great challenge to take on. For example, if you play or if you're watching Marion, for example, or you're watching then Prospect, naturally the Prospect has a very long history with Greeks, with Greek Australians. Prospect, on the other hand, not Prospect. Marion, on the other hand, had a mix of Kurdish, South Sudanese was very strong there, and this is just going off the top of my memory. There was at least, I think 3/4 of the defense was with South Sudanese as of last season, and the challenges that come with that is understanding, how they play football differently, but also like pronouncing names purely and simply, making sure that when you mention their ethnic backgrounds, you're not mentioning it in an offensive way, for example. And that's, if someone could say, "Oh, Mark, you're Italian, Maltese, Australian," that's fine. That doesn't upset me. But if I was to say that about someone perhaps who their heritage comes from a family member who's perhaps not around or not in the picture, that could be seen as something that's offensive to them. So for me, that sort of challenge is something that's why I come to games 3-4 hours early and plan to speak to every single player in a starting 11 and bench for both sides, because I want to understand, about them. I want to learn about players at this local level. I can't just look up where they've come from, what day they were born. That's not something that you can do. Higher levels, yeah, sure. But that's something I embark on. And that's one of the challenges that I naturally took on from, I think, the second game I ever commentated. I realized that's just how I add depth. And that's by learning about players. So that's one of the great challenges I've had. But yes, ethnic ties to certain clubs, which I think is a wonderful thing because it's about community and tradition. I have no problem with that. And I think it's been great to be a part of it and accepted into there, and people who are understanding of what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to portray when I speak. So I can't thank the 18 different Premier League clubs we've got and the warm welcome that they give me and allowing me to understand each of their players' story.
Yeah. So I've got different friends that I've coached in different clubs. I coached in the Premier League reserves for 2 years, Ropes Crossing, as well as like whatever lower levels I've done there as well at Ropes Crossing and the Bean competition. And some of my friends still playing the Premier League competition, and they were highly impressed with the background research you did on finding out how they've been playing through the season and a little bit about them. So they were very complimentary about that you did that research and that you cared enough to get to know their names and a little bit about what they were about and have a chat to the guys. That really was engaging, and they were quite endeared by that. So they said to take that forward whenever I spoke to you and just mention that and compliment you on that. So that's definitely one of the strong points you bring into the commentary piece. So
thank you.
Which is a good point for you. So let's cut down to the nitty gritty. Who is your favourite club team? Like, let's look worldwide and then in the A League.
The funny thing is, I've actually started, when people ask me that, in the last year or so, I've started saying Shrewsbury Town for a third division English side. Or I could go back to my native Venice FC or Trieste FC in the third and fourth division of the Italian football leagues, respectively. But in reality, I am at heart, and even though I do work a couple of doors down from the Wanderers training camp, I am a Sydney FC fan. My interest peaked when the combination of me really getting into football, and really good crowds, really good coverage, and me being able to understand what the world sort of looked like maybe around age 12. This is what news looked like. This is how our sport gets covered. And then, of course, Alessandro Del Piero signs for us in 2012, and it's huge. And that's where my interest explodes. So that was a natural affiliation for me, despite having lived in Western Sydney all my life. In saying that, the club team that I support in England, I don't like this in England, in Spain, in Italy, but I guess the team that I will put aside most time to watch is probably Arsenal. But still, look, I am a Sydney FC fan, and I always want to be a Sydney FC fan. I happily will wear the jerseys of other clubs, not my rival clubs, but of other clubs, and will buy them and hang them up proudly. But I like to say that I'm a Sydney FC fan, and that is my one true club.
That's a good call. So I say in the A League, my favourite side is the Central Coast Mariners. I won't wane from that at all. I think it's important for us to support the local league, and too many people just happily say, "Oh, it's not as good as the EPL." Of course, it's not. It doesn't have like 120 years of tradition or whatever. So like, you can draw parallels with that. So my favourite side in the world, I'd say, would be Glasgow Rangers. just from where my grandparents' parents were born and stuff like that. And it's a heritage lines and just all of that sort of stuff. So they'll always be there, and the Mariners will always be there. In England, I follow an odd one. I follow Cheltenham Town. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, but I followed them when they were down, not doing well. I followed them when they were up in League One before, down League Two into the Vauxhall Conference or Vanarama Leagues, and then back up to League One now. If you have a look on YouTube, they've still got one of the highlights. Put Cheltenham Town free kick, and you'll see about 6 guys run over the ball, left and right, and then someone hoiks it into the stand, and everyone's cheering. So they got beaten in that game against Portsmouth 6-1 or something. It was a cup tie to try to get into, or a playoff game to get into the League One a couple of years ago. So, but yeah, so that's my extent. I like it. I like Australian football, and I think more people need to follow it. It's struggling a little bit and needs a bit of love.
Yeah. And that look, that's a conversation that we can spend hours and hours talking about as to why we're in this predicament. But probably best for another time. Yeah. But I would love to see it get back to I think it's had probably 2 peaks, you could call it. When we hit round 1, Sydney Derby, 61,880 people. And I think probably the first 10 years really was a pretty consistent peak. So if we can get back to those sort of levels, I think we'll be doing really, really well.
Yep. So have you watched much of the A League since Paramount have taken over the broadcasting, or what do you think of the product they put up compared to like what Fox were doing?
Okay. I like the media based setups. I like who's there. I absolutely adore that Simon Hill is back. Absolutely adore it. And it was a shame that we went 12 to 18 months without him. I like the coverage. Like, for example, it looks like every other league where you film the game. Filming is perfectly fine. Quality is perfectly fine. I like that we're back to having 1 or 2 games free per week. I do like that. I wish there were more, but that's just, look, this is a 5 to 7 year deal, depending if they want to extend on it. I really hope they do. And I do hope that, we can sort of progress and grant our fans and Australian people more opportunities to watch their teams for free. Because look, I'll be honest, I don't own a Paramount Plus account. I chip in with my friends, and we sort of plan which games, and friends and family, which games we're going to watch and who can be logged on at one time. And I'll watch this game, you watch that game. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think a lot of people do that, and not many people are really to fork out $112, whatever it is up front, especially when you have to do it once per year and you have about 3 or 4 different streaming services to do it for. So I don't think that's a bad thing, even though that might get me in trouble. But that's, look, I like the coverage. I'm glad that they're willing to invest. Like any manager that you give a job to, I think Mikel Arteta is a great example. I think you need to give Paramount Plus time to implement what they want to do. There is a plan of attack to improve the quality of the league, the quality of the amount of people that we have in the stands and watching along each week. We need to let that plan implement, plant those seeds and let that grow. And I'm fingers crossed, absolutely hoping the Paramount can be the one to take us there. And let's hope for a long and prosperous relationship with them.
Yeah, well, they've got a long-term deal here now, so you can only give it time. It's in teething stages. It's going to take time to develop, like Foxtel did, but they had been around for a while before they put together the package for the A-League. So they had a fairly good handle on what they were doing with that.
Yes.
Just give it time and it'll come there. So once upon a time, when you're a bit younger, you did a podcast with Craig Foster. I saw that. I was highly impressed that you got the big fish and you got to have a chat to Craig Foster. He definitely has some very strong opinions on football and human rights matters in particular. And you should be listened to and spoken to with great reverence because of what he's achieved. He's played with the Socceroos and did a lot for the country. So how did you find speaking to Craig, and what did you gather from that whole podcast you did with him?
Craig Foster, and the 44 minutes that I spent on record and a couple of minutes before and after, is a wonderful human being, and should be adored by footballing fans, players, but also beyond that, with his work outside of football now, should be adored by the country and the world. And he is, and in the countries where he has had an impact on individuals' lives, he is adored, and deservingly so. I think his work has somehow gone under the radar, underrated. And it's time he gets the recognition he deserves, not just for being, like, I know he's won, most handsome dressed Australian celebrity, and he's won all these accolades when it comes to football, and he was a former Socceroo, yes, of course, but I think his most powerful work, tenfold, has come from what he's done in the last probably 5 to 10 years. He's genuine. He treats everybody, and that includes me. Like, he treats everybody with the exact same respect, and has time for everybody. And I think that's something I shouldn't even have to say it, because you can tell that there are people who are considered refugees, perhaps, and in the eyes of some Australian people, they are not the most liked people. But he sees that, and he part of his work, a lot of his work, is making sure that these people live lives that are as prosperous and as blessed as ours are, as everyone deserves. So, look, it was no surprise when he came in and he was a gentleman and he was willing to give me time. As I spoke to you before we press record here, I contacted him via LinkedIn, and he responded, and it was wonderful in his response, and it was an honor to be able to speak to him about football, and it would be great to be able to delve in more into what he's doing outside of football as well.
Well, he's doing a lot to raise awareness of, like, footballers that are in terrible plight, where, like, in Australian footballers have gone overseas to wherever their country of origin is, or whatever the case may be. And some of the people that ended up in, like, rather terrible political predicaments and stuff like that. So Craig's been a great advocate for that, and trying to push for helping the human rights element to this, and help get people home, and help look after people where other people might not worry about the issue altogether. It might not get attention at all. So it's good what he's doing, for sure. And he's got strong opinions too about the second division. So, which I would love to see personally, a second division get established. But at the moment, I'm not sure football's in the world's strongest place financially to be able to do that. And I think we need to be in a good place going forward before we do this, because we don't want to see clubs fall over. Would you like to see the introduction of, like, an MPL2 or something like that, or a level below to A League where there's genuine promotion and relegation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think any football purist, and they get sarcastic, maybe not sarcastically called Euro snobs, but those people who watch exclusively European football and choose to exclude the A League, I think it would go a long way to shifting that crowd. And whether you wrongly call them Euro snobs or not, there are reasons why they don't watch the A League. And I think, as much as we might go, watch the A League, what's wrong with you? It's your own country's game. We should be looking at the reasons as to why they aren't. And one of the major reasons why they aren't is because the team that finished last each season will be back here next year, all to play for in the wooden spoon. Now, it's something that in our country, we've always, that's the way it is. That's why we have a grand final system as well, for example. But in order to, you're appealing to a crowd who are trying to compete with what is overseas, the overseas market, and we're trying to take eyes from that to here. There are people who are staying up all hours of the night, myself included, to watch European football. And there's no reason why we can't get them to watch something on a 7:30 night on a Friday or Saturday. So that market is there. And I think the second division is a way to also get more money into the game. It will take time, probably a decade, before we get sort of even playing ground. But with it comes changes to salary caps. With it comes changes perhaps to a grand final system, if that is to exist or not. It allows teams that have been here, and yes, maybe they were born in the ethnic ties that we wanted to eliminate because of the reasons we don't need to delve into. But they are there, and they have fan bases, and they have following, and we don't need to create new teams to just jump into the A League straight away. And there's no sort of history behind them at all. I'd love to see promotion and relegation. I don't see why that doesn't exist. It would be great to see it.
Yeah, I think there's clubs there already that could easily fill the positions or voids of a second division if it come up, for sure. Some of the reasons why the old NSL was dissipated for financial and that, they're fair enough. And then there are other reasons that we both know. So political and ethnic, which were not of a good nature to introduce that in. So that instantly had people say they were never going to probably support the A League. They were very upset that they were excluded and didn't feel like everyone said the A League's supposed to be inclusive, but it clearly looked like it wasn't inclusive. So going forward, we'll get on to the next topic. What's the greatest highlight you've had to date in football, and what's your greatest highlight personally as a commentator? What so far do you come across?
Okay. I did a YouTube live stream of the Barcelona 8-2 game against Bayern Munich.
Yep.
That was a highlight in that I got to commentate 10 goals, first of all, in 90 minutes, so more than a goal every 10 minutes. What else have I done from a YouTube perspective? Well, in terms of here for BDSFA, there was a game between Rivers and Schofields and Mount Druitt Town Rangers at Schofields Park. Rivo went down 3-0 inside the first half on their own turf, clawed it back to 3-3 in the 86th or 88th minute, and then a 16-year-old in the Premier League competition scored the winner off the left flank, Moses Enriquez, who I saw the other day actually, and he's like, I remember distinctly because that night it was windy and rainy and it was on a very new lift system and it was rickety the entire time. I've just got a glimpse of my sunburn here today. It was very rickety the entire time. And I had my birthday celebration afterwards. And I didn't get to help with any of the setup. And I remember feeling bad, but I also remember thinking, oh, I might actually have today off and I won't feel bad about not helping my friends and family set up for what's happening tonight. And then the game happened, and I remember that first goal going in the second half when it was to make it 3-1, and the comeback started. And I was like, there was a reason, there was a footballing god reason why I'm here to commentate this game today, and to have a 92nd minute 4-goal second half, from 3-0 down comeback was one of the greatest commentary moments I think I will ever have. I lost my cool. You can see the camera shaking because I'm jumping up and down on this scaffolding that's, I probably was rusted out and not put together properly because it was just shaking around and my voice went extremely high pitched and, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, great memories. You can see the smile on my face just when I think about it. It was one of the last games we did as well before the 4-month lockdown this last year. My greatest footballing moment was being able to watch. It's strange because we would have been probably in Leichhardt or in the city watching this, but Italy winning the Euros finals last year. Italy Italy hadn't been in the finals since the humiliation of 2012 in the Euros as well at the hands of Spain, Fernando Torres, and etc. That hurt. And I was 5 when Italy won the World Cup in 2006. Plus, I can't really talk about that because of Grosso's dive. So against Australia and then Australia exiting. But, this was one where we were in lockdown and we were watching it as a family. And it was just, 2 penalty shootouts. No one had ever won 2 penalty shootouts to win the competition. England in their own home soil, our fans were being severely mistreated before, during, and after the game. It was odds against us. 1 minute 28 before we conceded the first goal. A comeback, possible red card. Like that was, for me, that's wonderful. Tears involved. It was just beautiful. And I think actually not being out with my friends and, perhaps being out having a good time at 4 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning in some random street, with flares going off everywhere like there was in Melbourne. I think something about being with my family in that time was really wonderful. And I'm glad I got to experience that with them. So 8-2 Barcelona, a comeback with Rivers and Schofields, and Italy winning the Euros are pretty big highlights of my footballing life.
Yeah, they are pretty good highlights to mention. So the last 8-2 anything someone sent me was when the Mariners got done 8-2 by the Jets, and one of my friends dubbed that up and sent it to me. I just deleted it, didn't even look at it. I went, what's this? And sort of first goal, I went, yeah, gone. Yeah, you're off Facebook now. See you, buddy.
Yeah, see you, mate.
Yeah, you were all right a couple of years ago. Now you're not. So in football commentary, I had different role models. I'd say one of my role models, you mentioned before, we've got Simon Hill, and then you got like the great Martin Tyler in the UK. So I followed a lot of English league way before Foxtel come around at the Watch Channel 2 about like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning to see it, or highlights on Sunday morning when they were on. And had Les Murray as well. He was the doyen of the game, unfortunately, before he passed away and left us. Who would be your biggest role models, and who's been the biggest influence so far in your career?
Hill is huge. 2005 World Cup qualifications against Uruguay, of course. Like that commentary sits in my mind forever. And then knowing that he'd only been involved for a couple of months beforehand, so Australia was new to him. Now I think he's, as basically an Australian citizen, now we're going to claim him like we do most New Zealanders. That probably means more to him now. And where the Socceroos sit, Matilda sit, probably affects him more now. But I think he really translated what we all felt. Well, I didn't. I was 4. But what Australia would have felt in that moment for so many different reasons. And Craig Foster that night yelling out Johnny Warren is a big thing that sits in my mind as well. I used to pass the time every now and then when I used to be in school. I was graduated 2019, of course, but I'd watch the shootout multiple times over when I got boarding class every now and then. That's a big thing. Martin Tyler, his Aguero moment is a big one. When Sunderland beat Manchester City before they got really, really huge under their current owners. He's around the goalkeeper and he's done it. That's a great moment. Offside though, but it was a great moment. I think the verbal, dream-like, adjective-rich, picture painting that what's her name does. Oh, what's his damn name? I've now forgotten his name. I can't remember his name. The Roma Barcelona comeback. The Roma Barcelona comeback. The great court in Rome. I can't remember his name. How have I forgotten? Oh, forgive me, but his name's complete. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Another wonderful commentator. I think the way he uses words is wonderful. I appreciate that so much. I've learnt words to use throughout that. But I think particularly Simon Hill's been a big one for me, just because it's close to home.
Yep.
And in terms of actually influencing my commentary, something that I pride myself on is pronouncing names correctly of all ethnic minorities. I think Portuguese is really interesting in the way that they kind of create sh sounds a lot with their names, and how R's become H's, for example. So things like that really interest me. So a lot of ethnic commentators who I will listen to, even purely down to changing my commentators on FIFA, as in the video game, so I can listen to what names are pronounced like by their native countrymen and women. That's also a huge thing. I couldn't put a name to any of those guys, but being able to hear what it sounds like through them, big thing for me as well.
Yeah. So which commentator do you think loses it the most in the A-League and really just gets the crowd bouncing? I would say at the top of my list at the moment would be Brenton Speed. When he loses it, he just sounds like the whole crowd's going to explode and his head's going to pop off. And he really buys into it, and it just gets you excited to listen to the commentary.
Brenton Speed is a wonderful person that we should talk about because he is so multi-talented. He does AFL, he's done rugby league, he's done Olympics, he's done our football, soccer. I think a lot of credit should go to him. I wouldn't say he's a jack of all trades, master of none, because I think he's mastered commentary, being able to commentate sport. He's done cricket, my word. He's done Big Bash. I guess you could separate that from sort of Test cricket and Big Bash. He's amazing as well. And you're right, he does get you out of your seat.
Yeah, 100%. So what would your long-term aim be? Where would you like to see this path go? See, you're early in your journey. There's guys like, I've had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Gordon Bray, one of the rugby great commentators. They call him the voice of rugby. And for a rugby union point of view, he was my role model in that. And he's 74 years old now. So Gordon's been doing this for over 55 years. So imagine 55 years down the track and you're sitting around and you're passing on information to someone else. And where would you like to say, oh, yeah, I've done like a FIFA World Cup, or like you'll want to hope a shootout goes in, one of the grand finals in Blacktown goes to the penalty shootout and the streaker runs through the field and the ball hits them or something and they have to retake it. Or
Yeah, well, first of all, I would love for my beloved adopted love Shrewsbury Town to be in the Premier League in 55 years' time. My goal is to commentate in Australia. I would love the opportunity to commentate any sport. Basically, get paid to commentate is what I aspire to do. I have been working my hand, not as much as I should, but I'm attempting to sort of branch out into different sports. But really, I think I have to come to terms with the fact that football is my plan A and my plan B, and even my plan C, and it's where I want to end up. And I think what I need to do is, what I am doing and have been doing for a number of years now is I've basically been telling myself, okay, well, if you're not going to do another sport, then you need to become the best in this. And there's plenty of things I got to work on. There are things I model up live, and I'll apologize for them and make some sort of joke out of it. I'm still finding my style, even after having done probably 50 games. I'm still finding my style, absolutely. I'm a little bit humorous as much as I am excitable in my commentary. So look, my goal is to really take commentary further and do it for our A League, do it for lower level leagues. If I have to move to England, my mother won't like this, but hopefully she hasn't. Hopefully she's gotten out of the car when she listens to this. She loves to listen to my podcast in the car, so we're making it long enough so that she gets out of the car by this point. And so if I have to move to England and I'm doing a lower league gig, and I move up the ranks with the teams that get promoted every year, I don't mind. But it's in the end, it's what's inspired me the most, and it's my plan A, plan B, plan C, and I will make it work. I will make it work.
So now you're very engaged in the Blacktown Premier League, commentating the Premier games, and you did Eastern Creek Pioneers and Prospect United yesterday. Result 4-1. What did you make of that game?
Eastern Creek are very strong.
Yeah.
Eastern Creek are very, very strong. So the majority of the team from Eastern Creek came from a Blue Mountains based competition. Yeah, they had look, they won't tell me what they are, I don't need to know, but they had their issues there that they couldn't resolve something. So they came here. Eastern Creek welcomed them with open arms. They came in, they considered 9 goals in 12 games in our cutoff season last year. They scored 35 in the same time and finished first in the 12 games before we got cut off. You know, the cutoff is 8 times 2, 16. So 16 and then a couple more finals games. So 16 games. We almost got to the end, but we weren't quite there. But that's where they finished, and they look just as strong this year. So they're now 3 games undefeated against Prospect. That includes 2 wins. And they look the best in the Deploy PL2 competition, that's for sure. Yep. Our PL1 competition starts in, now, a week and 6 days. Yep. So then we get to vary it up between PL1 and PL2.
So my son played last year as goalkeeper under 20s and reserves at Blacktown Premier Spurs. So I did get to see Eastern Creek. He played at Eastern Creek with that side the year before, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, the under 20s travelled and went to Premier Spurs. So they just did. The Blue Mountains Prem side come into the competition. I think it's been good for the competition. It's a very strong Premier League and Prem 2's comp. And probably disappointed that COVID ended it the way it did, because I would have thought that Eastern Creek were a shoe-in. They would have been a nice fit into Prem's 1. So got to do it all again. I saw the interview you did with the captain the other day. It's a nice little chat. He's a very engaging guy as well. So
he's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't see the one you did with Prospect, but I'm aware that you did one with Prospect as well. And I saw a chat you had with Annie Montgomery the other night as well. So I've been trying to hit him up myself to have a chat. Harder to get hold of than one in Lassiter's Reef out in the bush. So, So what was that like having a chat to Andy?
Oh, well, first of all, I'll have a chat to him as well. And from what we've done here now, I can absolutely recommend coming on here. That's the first thing. Andy's great. I talked to him about his history and coaching, his philosophy, how he approaches games. Is he more of a manager or a coach? And for me, the difference is, a coach is going to tactically outsmart the opposition, where a coach is going to make you, and I quote, slide tackle an aeroplane. and make you sort of believe that you can achieve anything, mayor manager sort of thing. Talked about that, and his affiliation to Rangers as well. So he's great character. I'm really grateful for the positioning of the chairs that we had set up, because those two guys are about 6'3", and somehow I've made it look like there was not that much height between us. So I've done very well there for myself. But honestly, like 100% really great guys, him and the captain, Alex Golan. And I wish them all the best for the season.
So they had a tough year last year in MPL2. When it all got wound up, they were sitting second last, still only first up and last down at the moment, isn't it, MPL? So they would have survived the drop from the look of it. Unfortunately, because no one went up or down, St George didn't go up when Sydney FC probably could have gone down from MPL1, and that as a bit of a tough break for a couple of sides who were like really dominating or whatever in their division. So other sides who probably could have gone down and mixed it all up. So how do you think that worked or didn't work? I think that was good. So there's been no promotion relegation from last.
Well, no, I'm fairly certain that they're now in an MPL1 space. So
Oh, really?
I'm not sure how that's. I honestly don't know how it's worked. I really don't, because of course they did finish second last, but they're playing against MPL1 teams. So I don't know. I actually don't know how it's worked. I'll be honest. When I've sort of tried to inquire about it, it's not really made sense. They're in an MPL1 space now. I could be completely wrong as well, but I don't think I am. Which is either way. With the competition they've had up in round one, the result didn't go their way. They had a spell of 20 minutes, so I've heard, where they lost the game. The game went away from them. It's a shame, against Northern Tigers. And they've got 3 away games in a row, and then they come back here. They have 8 out of 10 home games in the second half of the season. So you'd hope that we can get a run in. But in terms of the competition they're facing, they are expected to be pushing hard for finals, but it will be hard to get there. So I'm hoping for the best for them. They've got, from what I've seen here, and I've watched and filmed a lot of training for them, the squad is getting along really well. And I see it particularly in the warm-ups when, you're still mucking around a little bit, but you're playing football still there. They're getting along well. The new guys have come in with good experience and goal scoring and goal saving abilities. So they just need to gel.
Yep.
And I think they'll be okay.
Yep. So go back to the local Premier League again. So back to PL2. So outside of Eastern Creek, so I'll run through the other results for you. So have a bit of a look, had a quick chat before we come on air. Minchinbury knocked over Glenwood, which surprised me, 4-2. Last time I coached against them, they were a young side still developing, and I thought Glenwood's problem then looked like they were a bit of an older side, so that's a little bit of a surprise. Oakfield got up 3-0 against Quakesfield Tigers, and St Pat's, who've been developing for a few years, they won the under-20s a couple of years ago and were in the state championships. I think they got to the final. They beat Blacktown Premier Spurs 3-2. What do you think of those other results? Oh, we'll go to under-21s actually.
Okay.
United beat Rivo 6-0. That's a bit of a surprise. Other than that, what did you make of the breakdown, the other Premier League results? Minchinbury getting up over Glenwood.
Yep. Well, look, we'll start with that one. Minchinbury up over Glenwood. Now, Glenwood have admittedly had multiple changes. A lot of their squad have moved away from football, actually, taking up, sort of health and fitness in other areas other than this wonderful pigskin sport of ours. That's their choice. They've had to bring in players a lot externally, as well as promote their reserves in order to build a team. So there is going to be recovery. Minchinbury were not one of the better teams last year, and it's great to see them doing something different. I spoke to their captain, who was a really confident bloke, and he said that things were looking better this season, and to put 4 past Glenwood is really great for them. I'm sure Glenwood need time to gel, and that will take time. Of course, remember, flood affected really high in this area at the moment in Blacktown Shire. and teams are struggling to get onto the pitch. So the more time they need, the more time they get, the better they'll be. Oakville United over Quakers Hill. Now, Quakers Hill Tigers notoriously are a young team, and in a couple of years, I really do think they'll give a hit in their stride. Oakville were a good team last year, and I think they've gotten better. Now, they've also got a friend of mine who is playing in their midfield. He scored and missed a penalty. He didn't tell me that he missed a penalty. So, Yannick, if you ever happen to stumble across this, or I'll send the link to you. I can't wait to cover one of your games one day. In fact, I could probably check it in this little piece of paper here when I get to cover you guys.
Feel free to drop his name, because I know a couple of people at the club. We can roast him a little bit.
No, Yannick. So he plays sort of 8 and 10, advanced 8, number 10. So he's a very good dude. They're a very good friend of mine. And good to see him score on his return to football. But also Oakville, doing really well. And especially since Oakville have been the most affected club due to floods, 13 metres underwater their home ground is. We hope that by round 5, which is when we move away from Blacktown football action, they'll be back to their best. And again, we've offered our help. We want to volunteer and help them out. If they do need help, please just ask. Please just ask. And finally, Blacktown St. Pat's versus Premier Spurs. Now, Premier Spurs had a big clear out as well, similar to Glenwood, but that was more by their own choice rather than Glenwood just having players leaving on their own decision. Spurs do look better, to put it to the team that finished second place last year, but Blacktown St. Pat's did admit that even though they were training in the same sort of intensity and their captain had the same sort of belief, the team's, a couple of the best players did move to, I guess they would have called it greener pastures. So into a Premier League space, a PL1 space. So for Blacktown St. Pat's fans and their players, good to see that they can still get a win in round 1, but it's going to come harder than when they finished second last year. Yep. So, but in summary, Minchinbury Jets, Blacktown Premier Spurs look a whole lot better. Quakers Hill Tigers have a way to go before their young team really gets up to the physicality of the competition. Glenwood Redbacks need time to gel with their new team. Premier Spurs look better. Blacktown St. Pat's might have gone back in terms of their quality on paper, but if they can put results on the board, then they can put results on the board. And finally, Oakville, great to see them doing well amidst adversity.
So who's in Premier League ones this year? Who's sitting up in that? You're aware of? I haven't had a look at it, but take stab Blacktown Workers.
Based upon history, the best 2 teams will be Pons and Marion.
Yep.
That's become a derby match of sorts. Workers are becoming a better side. Doonside Hawks have become a better side. Polonia have cleared out their coaching and sort of physio and fitness. I can't think of the word, conditioning sort of mentors. Yep. They've cleared that out. And the captain I spoke to is a former NPL player who comes from high standards, and he said that he was helping implement that there. So there's a new philosophy of determined excellence at Polonia. It's good to see those guys looking at least sounding better. So there's a lot of good clubs. I think the competition will be more tough this year in Deploy PL1, but I still do think those top 2 teams who just have the pulling power are still going to be the 2 teams to beat.
Yeah. Well, Marion's been right up there for a long period of time, and the Ponds have been working their way up there. So the last couple of years when I left, they were sitting up around the top. So they're pretty much the benchmark now. Yep. I actually think their long-term aim is to get into MPL. Don't know if it's realistic or not. So because of the criteria that's in place. So, but other than that, I would say they've got the numbers, they've got the money. They've got the right bloke, a president. They're in the right ground. CSI Schofield's old ground. It looks pretty good, that little stadium, when they get it packed up. So, and I think they look good. I know Ropes Crossing's got a new Prem's coach this year, so they're looking all right. So it'll be an exciting competition. So who do you reckon is going to win the A League this year at the moment?
It's hard to look past the best defensive team, always. But whoever finishes second has made it to the grand final every single year. That looks like it will be Melbourne City. And you can count now on the experience of Melbourne City after their grand final loss and win in the last 3 years, that they could take it out. And I think on their day they're better. But Western United look really strong. I think the Wanderers in time will be strong, but they need to stick with the coach, not clear out all their players. I think Sydney need a clear out of sorts, whether that's at the top or that's at a team sheet level. I don't know. Don't want to talk about it really. It's not worth it. Um, uh, it Wellington are in a good bit of form. They've got to carry it through to the end.
Yep.
But I really do think it's between probably your Melbourne clubs. Your 3 Melbourne clubs.
Yeah. I would say at the moment, from scoping from the outside, and I don't like any of them, so I'll just say it unbiased. I'd say Melbourne City's up there again, but they've just put the numbers on the board, getting results when they matter week in, week out. They've got the depth of players.
Yeah.
And Western United's getting runs on the board. MacArthur, a little bit hit or miss to do anything. I think Melbourne Victory's got the right players and the right coach, so if they can get it all happening at the right time and get it all mixed together and rolling forward now, they'll do all right, because they're still sitting in third position or something like that at the moment. So they're right up there. I would think at the moment you've got Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory grand final probably. I made a bold prediction at the start of the year that Perth wouldn't make the top 6 and Sydney wouldn't make the top 6. And at the moment, I think they might both come off.
Could.
They just need to, I think they've got older squads and they need to rejuvenate the squad. So that's all it looks like. They haven't changed anything too major, haven't changed the philosophy. So
I made a pretty bold prediction on my Instagram story that Sturridge wouldn't score more than 10 goals. He's on 0. I just didn't think it worked. I think the betting issue that he had and the injuries he's had, while not fortuitous, of course, has really slowed down his career, and that's a shame for him. I just sort of saw his attitude when he came and arrived, and the way he sort of interacted with fans, and I wondered if that was what I wanted to see. And I guess my prediction is going to be right, unless he comes out with it. But I'm not proud of that. I want everyone to succeed. I'm just putting it out there. But I guess that was mine. We talked about predictions. That was mine. I think Sydney, I am a Sydney fan, but I think Sydney have this new signing in Luciano Narsing, a lot of European experience. Could be a good player. Looked really good in the derby when not match fit. Started, we've now scored 7 goals, conceded none in our last 2. One was an Asian Champions League qualifying match, and one was our most recent game against Perth. I do think Sydney will make the top 6. I think Perth are less likely. But I'd say, between those Melbourne teams for me.
Yeah.
Popovich, lots of experience. Melbourne City, just too much quality.
I really think, looking at Wanderers too, like I'd like not to say, but I really think they've got the right players, or they're getting the right players. They're building, so now just need to get the right person to run the joint. I think that might be Mark Rudan when he gets a full pre-season, gets to keep the team and add a few that he wants to add to it, and maybe put the broom through a couple of guys. But Jack Rodwell, I'd say he's a good signing. So if I haven't signed him long term, I think they need to look at that, because his injection, what he's doing.
He's probably the best player in the league, and I mean that. Yeah. We got to remember the level that guy was touted for. Yeah. When he broke through, and even though it didn't work at Manchester City, attitude problems aside, whether you got a bad attitude or not, he's levels above what we have here. Yeah. And I think he's showing it. Wasted at centre back in the back 5, needs to play in a more advanced position, at minimum 8. I think. Yeah. I'd like to see him even sort of playing as the most advanced 8. Really, probably not a 10. I'd love to see him there. So. I really do think he is a very, very good player. But, he's been out of the team for a little bit now. Wanderers are struggling.
Yeah. As quality and output, you can't replace the quality and output that he's got. So his service, more watch them play, service is good. They just seem to have moments where they have a lapse, and that lapse hurts them. So similar to the Mariners, I'd like to say the Mariners are going to be very good. I think we're still short a 9, although Jason Cummings, he's been the best addition. So
Shrewsbury Town, I'm telling you, that's my team, man.
Yeah.
2 against Liverpool. I mean, that's serious.
The A League looks good. I think the foreign players we signed this year through most clubs have made a valuable input to the teams they're in.
Yeah.
So they might not have been Alessandro. Everyone's waiting for another Alessandro Del Piero. I don't think there'll be one for a long period of time, if there isn't one at all. So he's like a once-in-a-lifetime guy that will come into the A League. So
Well, look, Ronaldo's grandparents are Australian citizens who reside in Perth. If he wants to switch allegiances when he's really done with Portugal and he wants to play for us at age 45, I don't mind. He can do it.
Yeah.
If CR7 is watching, and I hope he is, still time, mate. Still time.
That'd be nice, playing for Tasmania United or Canberra United or something like that. Come through, score 10 or 11 goals on debut. Then we'll see if he's chasing through balls in. So.
Yeah, that's right. But he still misses about 4 free kicks. So that's
so
the way
who do you reckon's going to take out the EPL?
Oh, man. Hang on. It instinctively became Man City because for the last 5 years. Okay, here's the thing. Liverpool are hungrier.
Yep.
This is really, and again, this is a conversation for another podcast. This is probably Liverpool's second last season where this squad stays together, really stays together. And even if they retain everybody contract-wise, everyone's going to be around at 32 years old, which is when you'd expect most to start dropping off.
Yep.
And they are pretty reliant on pace. So pace is something that's, well, not reliant, but the pace is a big part of their game. So when that does go, that'll be an issue for them. So I think there is a desire now with already one trophy to their name. That's really sort of, it's like a smelling salt. It's really opened their lungs for more trophies this season. I think they're a big shout for the UCL. They're experienced. They've won it recently. I think Liverpool can close the gap, but if anybody in history can hold them out, and we've seen it so many times, it's Man City. They are notorious winners, and we are blessed that Jurgen Klopp came into and accidentally created the perfect counterpart to Man City. And despite the fact I'm calling it a perfect counterpart, and everyone will agree with that, they've only stopped them once from 5 attempts, really, when they've been competitive, once in 5. And we're seeing that as good competition. So, look, Liverpool's last big chance, I think this is the best they've looked in a while. No one's really injured. I think this is their last chance to do it. But can they do it? They have a game against them. And I think they can win it.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think they can do it.
But Liverpool's got the goal advantage. Liverpool definitely need to win. If they don't beat Manchester City, Liverpool's biggest problem, and I'd say in the EPL, they've been the side I support the most over the years. The biggest problem I've seen is Liverpool have lost competitions, not from losing too many games. Back in the early 90s, they could have won the Premier League and they had about 12 draws. They only had about 3 or 4 losses. They were right up there. They end up finishing 6th or something like that. Had 12 draws out of 38. It just ruled them. So if they had picked up, turned 6 of them into wins, that's an extra 12 points. They probably would have finished second. They would have really pushed for the title, but been a few times they've done it. They hurt themselves more than the opposition they're playing against. So that's pretty tough. Mark, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it very much. You got a good insight into you and your career, and I wish you all the best. And I can't wait to collaborate with you again. Hope to catch up in person. So thanks for having a chat on Duckman TV.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I recommend anyone who's made it this far, and I hope you all have, to, if you're asked, please come on here, support the channel out, like, subscribe, share to people on Facebook, of course, or like the page. I guess you can't really subscribe to a Facebook page. Please, if you're happy with me saying, please check out the BDSFA Facebook page, BDSFA, sort of a white and red football looking logo. That's where we do our match of the round live streams that I commentate. And this is a competition that's dedicated to progressing local talent and giving local talent the opportunity to feel like and play like they are at the highest level, and that's what they deserve. People deserve that when they've worked as hard as they have, and we're building footballs for the future and people who are interested in football in the future. So it's been great to be on here. Thanks very much. And yes, we will collaborate again. I'd love to be back on here. I can't wait to meet you in real life when we cross paths. And thank you genuinely for having me.
Absolutely, no worries. And absolutely, as Mark said, that's what this page is about, trying to promote grassroots sport. So I've been a grassroots sports person my whole life. The podcast name Weekend Warriors, just for the audio podcast, it come about because it represented, I felt like I was a weekend warrior. I treated it like my EPL and everything. Every weekend I went out to play, and it was never significant or anything like that, but it was to me. Every game was a World Cup final to me. And it is to a lot of people who play sports in many, many different sports across the district, men, women, and children. So, and this is what it's all about, giving them an opportunity to have a voice and promote what they're all about. So thanks again. And yeah, absolutely cannot wait to catch up with you in the future. Thanks for your time tonight.
Awesome. Thank you.